Hello, and welcome to Fostering Teaching Presence in Virtual Learning Environments. I am your facilitator, Abigail Joseph. In this course, we're going to examine how to set your tone for your online class, how you manage your presence, organize your course, facilitate interaction, and scaffold learners. In doing so, you must always consider the seven principles of good practice, not just for teaching presence, but any course you embark upon creating for your students. Chief among those principles is encouraging contact between students and faculty, as well as the communication of high expectations within the online environment. And some of the strategies that can be employed is to welcome students to the course. This can be done in terms of welcome messages, welcome forms, or a recorded message so that students can view and listen. Video presentations also cater for the diverse needs of learners, and also there are some learners who may not be constantly present during synchronous sessions, and so that is a good idea. Now, I have here to use icebreakers. There are several icebreakers that can be used. Some persons like two truths and one lie, introducing themselves to the colleagues, and the facilities are also getting um, becoming a part of this activity. Now, I do not want you to think of the objectives, and let me just go back to them for a while, as separate in terms of specific and separate targets. They are all intertwined, and you will see that one sort of strategy can target or facilitate the setting up of tone, for example, and will still facilitate instruction. So I don't want you to see them as separate entities or separate features, but can all work in a beautiful synergetic relationship to create a good teaching practice or presence in your classroom environment. This now we're going to look at managing your presence. Your presence must be felt, yes, in the virtual learning environment, and often teachers may not know how to do this deliberately. And so we have here to create routines. You can use creative ways to introduce the lesson. For example, some persons may use music, some persons may use sounds or pictures or images, the way you transition from lesson or from point to point within your course, whether it is synchronous or asynchronous, and the way you end sessions. Do you end it with the same way? I once saw a class that started with the song. It was the welcome song, and towards the end, there was the farewell song. Based on your age range, you will determine what is necessary. However, choose something that your students will like and will be accustomed to receiving in your online environment. Make students accountable when you're giving tasks. Ensure that you provide the rubrics and timelines so that the students can manage their own learning. When they know what you as the facilitator you're asking for, it is more likely that they produce this well. You want to also communicate your availability, even if you're going to do everything in your power to ensure that the students receive enough of the information, the content, or the route or channels of finding those information. You want to still make yourself available, but you do not want to make yourself too available. And so messages come at 1 a.m. in the morning when a child is or a student is now going through the coursework. So you need to indicate your hours that are available as well as when you can be contacted. So are you able to be contacted on a Saturday or Sunday? What hours between 8 and 9? And lastly, feedback is extremely important. The students are already aware that you are not with them as they are accustomed to. And so you need to provide feedback for them so that they know you're always there paying attention to their work. When there are questions, You need to answer, or at least if you do not know the answer now, you can let them know that you're looking for it in order to solve whatever problems they have. Very The organization of your course is also an important aspect of your teaching presence. How you organize the course would determine how well the student is able to learn with or without you. And so the principles or universal design for learning principles can be employed where you look at how the students are engaged in your class, how they express themselves, and what sort of activities they're involved in, as well as your own material. Is it facilitating easy comprehension? Are you catering for multiple abilities and multiple exceptionalities? You need you to be diverse in the class so that every student has the opportunity of equal access to content. After this, it's not enough to simply put in information there. We learn best when we apply our knowledge to an actual situation. So sometimes we go to courses and they constantly tell us, okay, do this, do that, but we do not see the rationale for doing it because we don't have a problem. And so using the design thinking process where you define a problem or you set a context for students, and everything around your project or your course is aimed to dealing or resolving this problem, is a good approach that you should consider when organizing your course. So information pertaining to this would be available in your course readings. We were looking at facilitating interactivity. Now, you know that in communication, it is very cold when there is one person speaking. It is pointless because the message needs to be carried out effectively to the receiver. And with computer mediated communications, we want to ensure that the same level of interaction is evident in the online environment. And so these are strategies for synchronous discussions. Synchronous discussions could be via Zoom or via chats within a particular forum where everybody is there at one time. And these suggestions or strategies prevent the sort of lecture style that is usually associated with Zoom sessions or Google Meet, where you provide the students with an agenda so they know offhand what is going to be dealt with and what they should be asking for. It's a sort of anticipation guide for the session. So you also communicate your expectations, especially because some persons forget that being online is can be challenging when you are in an environment where you're not always seen. Even if persons are on camera, um, phones might be available or distractions. So you want to set the environment as much as possible at their homes or within their spaces and as well as yours to so communicating these expectations is pivotal in such a space. You can also ask the students to generate their own discussion questions, and that will allow them to get actively engaged in your class. And that we know from research that active engagement is what's going to foster learning and solidify learning. When you start the conference, remember when you're starting a new learning session that you're not sure what happened before you. You're not sure what will has been affecting your audience or your students or your participants. And so start with a very light a little icebreaker. Ask them how they're feeling, or pick an animal to describe them, use a word, or simply ask them about their day before you jump right into instruction. And always ask them if they don't want to speak, that they could use the chat. Some persons are more auditory, like myself, than they are some persons are sorry, they're very text based. So with that strong read write preference, they may want to type in the chat, and so you need to always look at the chat so that nobody feels like they were left behind. And There are some times where you do not need the entire class. You can isolate the students who may need extra help. I do that sometimes using Google Forms, or when they have the exit slips or tickets, and I ask them what they understand, and I can pull these students who are having challenges out of the class and have shorter sessions. That's another strategy that you can consider. So it's not all the time that you need an entire class for a synchronous session. And ask the students to assess their participation online. Tell them how they felt. You could give them checklists or rubrics because they need a lot more guidance than you can give them because of their different environments. So we're looking at how you're going to do this in asynchronous sessions because it is a bit different, but it is also as important in an asynchronous session where you have narrated presentations. And here we see videos coming. Again, download things, or and I'm suggesting that you do it in PDF format so it is easily accessible to every reader or every device. Pose questions, give them scenarios so you have students or participants engaging in interacting with the material that is being given and the content. You can also have them in social interactions where they and you can join in. You don't need to be standing on the sideline looking, but you can add your little prompts, ask questions, engage in the discussion as well, so that the asynchronous discussions are more relevant, more lifelike, more real and authentic. And let them give feedback. So it's not enough to just read somebody's post. You need to guide them by asking, give them maybe some sort of format for responding in a post or discussion post so that they can do it well. You realize that there is a correlation between how the content is interacted with in both the synchronous and asynchronous sessions, where videos are extremely important regardless of the modality. We realize that students also like chats and discussions, and this is how we learn. We are social beings. Communicating, interacting, interrogating information is almost by design what we will, you know, again, what we have been created to do. Scaffolding is also important. You have learners of various needs. And again, these are not separate but all interconnected. Record videos, break down complex topics into smaller parts. You want to do those things. I'm going from anti clockwise. Break down concepts into smaller topics. And what I just did was add a cue. Even when you're presenting visual information and you're not literally pointing on the screen, telling them the direction is important. That's a way of scaffolding. Provide repeated cues. So, for example, if you see this particular sound, this is what it means. Or every time you have this emoji, that's what you are required to do. So you providing repeated cues and guides so that the students can know what you is expected of them even without you being physically here. So hosting live sessions is wonderful if you plan it well. Small group meetings, breakout rooms, for example, in Zoom and Google Meet, that allow students to break up into smaller groups, even as it would have been done in the physical classroom, but even more so, sometimes if more effective than that, because my students have stated that they find breakout rooms extremely um, wonderful. They like being in the groups by themselves, it's like they're in their own space. And you, as a facilitator, can pop in and out of the groups and provide scaffolding or support for the groups based on their questions. Quick polls throughout the lesson is a good way of scaffolding and also assessing their learning and making them more aware of also checking theirs. And of course, lastly, we see that coming up again, message forums, forums where students can communicate, when persons can interact and engage in the learning tasks. I want to close up by stating that when it comes to online learning, no one is an authority on all things. However, I know that implementing those strategies and having those considerations in your class have proven to be effective. I am an example of it, and I know that it can work for you. Do not feel intimidated by those points that I have given. So do not feel intimidated when you're setting the tone for your online class or managing your presence, when you're organizing your course, facilitating interaction and scaffolding learners. What I want you to do, however, is to make sure that you keep notes. It's important for you to know if something that you're trying something, you're aware of at what point it is challenging or at what point it went downhill, so to speak. So thank you for listening. I hope that you are going to be experimenting with this, not just through this course, but even after, so that it can revolutionize, it can transform, and make your learning environment even more effective than it has already been. Goodbye, and thanks for listening once again.